I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We're happy to welcome the team from Ligas Family Advocate Program and the Family Support Network from the Arc of Illinois. Given the number of participants today, we may not get to all of the questions, but we will address as many as possible at the end of the presentation. So please use the Q&A box, not the chat box, to submit your questions, and then we will take time at the end for questions. And the questions that we do not get to today, we will collect and email to the team so that all of your questions do get answered. We will send a PowerPoint out tomorrow from today's presentation, so you'll have a copy of the slides and just a little information about Family Matters. We're one of two parent centers in the state of Illinois. And I do want to say at Family Matters, we don't offer any form of legal services or legal advice. So any information taken from presentations or any information given should not be considered as such. And since we only have an hour, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to you all.
Thank you so much, Carrie. My name is Ruth Aguilar. I am the Senior Ligas Family Advocate at the Ligas Family Advocate Program. And today I have with me Ms. Annie Bruno and Shakari Asbury. So they will be talking to you in a little bit. So let's get started and have this conversation and giving you all of this information. So I see Megan Moody joining us today. Hopefully our director, Shirley Perez, join us as well. Welcome, Megan. Thank you so much for being here. We have a nice crowd today. Let's get started. Shakari, please advance the slides, please. A little bit about the programs at the Arc of Illinois. The Family Support Network is a program where Ms. Shakari is, and they provide you information about all of the services that are available in the community. While you may not be in services from the state or you're just seeking for resources, you can reach out to Shakari and the director, Ms. Shirley Perez, for information and resources. The Ligas Family Advocate Program is the program where Ms. Annie and I work under Ms. Shirley Perez, and we work with families being selected from the funds. So anybody seeking services and being a Ligas class member can reach out to us for information and guidance in the process of navigating the system of the state. I want to point out also the Illinois lifespan, information and resources from birth to all the way to 100. All of these information, it's shared by Ms. Rocio Perez and her team, and you can reach out to them for whatever resources you're seeking, whether you're looking for resources in the community for mental illness, behavioral intervention, therapies. They may have a wealth of information to share with you. And there is also, I don't want to go through all of the programs. Feel free to visit the website at the Arc of Illinois so you can get more a hints of every program that we share. But also I want to point out the Consumer Stipend Program. This is kind of like a scholarship type of program where you can apply for, say you want to go to a conference that is related to intellectual and developmental disabilities. You can apply for the stipend program and they will help you with assistance, financial assistance to pay for the training that you are seeking to go to. Or maybe you need to pay for transportation or hotels or meals or even respite, somebody to take care of your child while you attend the conference. So reach out to us if you need an application for that. Next slide, please. The Ligas Family Advocate Program was established in 2014 as a result of the Ligas consent decree. And let me tell you a little bit about what a Ligas class member is and why we exist. A Ligas class member is considered a person who has an intellectual or developmental disability, who is over 18 years old, and the state has a record that this person is seeking services from the state. So those are the three categories that every person to be considered a Ligas class member must meet. And then the Ligas consent decree started in 2011 because of a lawsuit. Stanley Ligas, who happens to have Down syndrome, sue the state because he wanted to have access to the community services in the community and continue living a meaningful life in the community. And the state said, well, we don't have anything. You're going to have to go to an institution. So, and Stanley said no. And lawyers from Equip for Equality and Stanley Ligas and other people sue the state. And then the court dictated that every person being a Ligas class member is now to be served in the community as everyone else. In the next slide, you will see the contact information and a little bit more information about the Ligas consent decree. Next slide, please. So if you want to contact them, definitely read more about it. If you want to know more about the Ligas consent decree, here's the information. As Carrie said, all of the slides will be shared with you today or tomorrow. And the recording will be posted on their website. In the next slide, you will see the contact information for Ms. Laura Miller, who is the head of the attorneys, and the Ligas court monitor will answer questions for you if you have any questions on that. Or you can reach out to us and we can direct you to the right person in case you have any specific comments or information is needed about the Ligas consent decree. And then go to the next slide and then the next slide, because that is the contact information for Ronnie Kahn, which is the Ligas monitor. And the following slide will show you the information about Ms. Laura Miller. There you are. There you have it. And also there is the link where you can find documents related to the case if you have interest in reading more about the Ligas case. Next slide, please. So the goals for today is to share basic introduction to the Illinois home and community-based waivers. And I apologize for my you know what it's like having a dog at home. Apologies for that. The mailman just came by. So the state of Illinois has 9 waivers paid by Medicaid. So these waivers, we are going to talk about information about 2 of them, the children's waiver and the, hold on.
Our apologies as Ruth deals with a dog. We all know that. We've all been there. I'll just pop in and kind of keep us going here that Ruth was saying that there's 9 waivers paid for by Medicaid through the state of Illinois. And today we're going to be talking about the Department of Human Services Developmental Disabilities waiver. I'll let Ruth take it away.
Thank you so much, Annie. You see what teamwork looks like? You never know when somebody's going to knock on your door and they don't acknowledge that you're working just because you're at home. But thank you so much for your patience. So next is consider the steps to take the following upon selection. So we're going to talk about different topics because we acknowledge that this may be a crowd from different backgrounds, that you are at different stages seeking services. So we're going to talk about the upon selection. That's something that Ms. Shokari will cover in a few minutes. We are here to help you identify services offered within the waivers. We're going to talk, Ms. Annie is going to talk about the children's waiver and then talk about the adult waiver, which is 2 of those 9 waivers covered by Medicaid. We also want to discuss ideas and give you examples. We want to help you understand how to connect with providers, how to connect with self-advocates, even with us, and how to connect with your ISC, with your Independent Service Coordination Agency. And we're going to review this information as we talk throughout all of the slides. Next slide, please. Some key acronyms that I want you to be aware of, because this is a complex jargon that we use sometimes, or more often that we want to. We are going to try not to use a lot of acronyms, but we want to give you a brief explanation of some of the acronyms that are being used throughout this community, so you get familiar with all of this information. CILA stands for Community Integrated Living Arrangements. DD, it's referred to the developmental disabilities. CDS stands for Community Day Service Programs. PASS is when you are selected from PONS and enter into the pre-admission screening, which is when you get invited to apply for the benefits. Once you are PONS selected, this is one of the first stages that you will go through. And then the HBS, which is home-based services, is one of those services that you select under the waiver. ICF-DD, and we're going to briefly touch base on ICF, Intermediate Care Facility for Individuals with Developmental Disabilities. This is a service that is not part of being PONS. You can actually access these services without waiting for being in the PONS list. Your ISD, your Independent Service Coordination Agency, also sometimes interchangeably used by the Independent Service Coordinator, which is the actual agent, and the ISC, the agency, and the agent. So you can kind of like use those acronyms, that acronym interchangeably. And DHS is the Department of Human Services, for which under DDD is the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and DRS, which we're not going to cover in this section, in this session, is the Division of Rehabilitative Services. Next slide, please. So this is a map for you to have a better understanding when some families sometimes reach out to us and say, hi, I don't understand the process. It's so difficult. So the Ligas Family Advocate Program decided to create this map to give you kind of like a follow-through timeline or where things start and how to proceed, what services need to be in place, and what you need to do when something happens. And those are key elements being reflected in this little map that shows in a very simple way how you go through navigating the process of getting services from the state. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Shakari Asbury, because she's going to be talking about bonds and the different categories. Shakari, take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. Again, my name is Shakari Asbury. I am one of the Ligas family advocates here, and I also work under Ms. Shirley Perez's second program, the Family Support Network, as well as a liaison. So as Ms. Ruth said, we're going to go ahead and discuss PUNS and exactly what is PUNS and what it does and how it works. So PUNS, this is not an acronym, and it does not prioritize based on the urgency of needs, okay? The PUNS is a database in the state of Illinois that registers children and adults alike who need developmental disability waivers, such as the CILA, which is the Community Integrated Living Arrangement, home-based supports, and the child group homes, okay? Now, these services are all funded through Medicaid, okay? And this is through the Illinois Department of Human Services and the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Now, with the funding, as long as the funding is available, they will start the process of selecting individuals from that PUNS database and invite them to apply for the waiver services that I just mentioned earlier, the CILA, the home-based supports, or the child group homes when it comes to the children's waiver. So as long as the budget is there, they will start the process to make sure to invite individuals to go ahead and go through the process. And you will start the process with your ISC, which is your Independent Service Coordination Agency, okay? Now, with the PUNS category, criteria, forms, and instructions, they have been updated recently, and this will help not only the Department of Human Services and Division of Developmental Disabilities, this also helps the individual who is on the actual PUNS waitlist, okay, as well. This helps reduce confusion and increase transparency, and this makes the selection process a lot smoother on both ends. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the eligibility based on diagnosis. So your diagnosis determines your eligibility for your PUNS database selection. Now, with the intellectual disability, you are required to have an IQ of 70 or below, and this has to be proven prior to the age of 18 years old, okay? With developmental disabilities, there are groups of conditions due to impairment in physical, learning, language, or behavioral areas. And these conditions begin during the developmental period and may impact the person's day-to-day functioning and will last throughout a person's lifetime, okay? And you also have related conditions. These conditions such as cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism spectrum disorder, traumatic brain injury, and Prader-Willi. These are found to be closely related to an intellectual disability and having manifest prior to the age of 22 years of age, okay? So these are just some of the diagnoses that will help determine your eligibility when it comes to the PUNS database and being selected from that wait list. Now, there are two different categories when it comes to the PUNS. You have what's called seeking services or what's called planning services, okay? Now, the seeking services is more so for the individuals who are currently in need of services and supports, okay? These are for the children or adults enrolling in the PUNS, and they can be placed directly into the seeking service category, given that they meet that criteria described in the description of seeking services. The PUNS selections are only made from the seeking service category as the funding is available. As I mentioned earlier, the Department of Human Services and Division of Developmental Disabilities have to make sure funding is available. Once it's available, they will start the selection process, okay? Now, with your planning services, these are for individuals who do not currently need services or supports right away, but they may need it in the future, okay? This is more so helpful for individuals or who are going through, who do not anticipate, forgive me, the need for services right away. Also, this helps for, you know, if you think in the future, something may possibly could happen to the caregiver of the individual who's looking for services and support. So you have to keep that in consideration. God forbid something happens to you, or maybe there's a huge situation within the family and they're not going to be able to take care of that individual. So you just want to go ahead and understand that there is a planning category. And if you want to go ahead and get in this category as opposed to seeking, you can definitely do so. But keep in mind, when you're in the planning category, that does not move an individual closer to funding. The time on the PUNS list begins accumulating towards the selection only when the individual is in the seeking category. So if you know the individual needs services or supports right away, you want to go ahead and place them in seeking, not planning. If you're in planning, understand that you may not get selected once they have the budget available and they start the process of selecting individuals off the wait list. Now, this next slide, we're going to, oh, it's not working for me. One moment. There we go. The next slide describes what an individual should do if they want to be placed in that PUNS database, okay? If you think maybe you want to go ahead and get your child or a loved one onto the PUNS database, you can always start right away. There's no need to wait. They actually suggest the earlier, the better. You can start as early as 2.5 years old for the individual. And understand that the wait time for services does not start until the age of 18. That's very important to remember, okay? When you place that individual's name on the list as soon as possible, even if before the age of 18, this will allow the state to plan for the budget that they have available, the funding that they're going to have available for the needs of individuals who will qualify for that support in the future. In order to be placed in that PUNS database, you want to go ahead and reach out to your ISC. That stands for Independent Service Coordination Agency. If you do not know who that agency is, you can simply reach out to the Ligas Family Advocate Program, and any of us will be more than happy to assist you with locating that agency and providing you their contact information so that you could go ahead and reach out and get placed on that wait list or the database, my apologies. And also, just a side note, for the second time in over 13 years, the individuals were selected for the children's waiver in 2023. They were selected from the seeking category, because remember, as I mentioned earlier, in order to be taken off the list, you want to be in the seeking as opposed to the planning for services, okay? Because the planning means that you don't need the services right away. You will most likely need them in the future. Seeking, meaning that you will need the services as soon as possible, okay? That you are in need of services and supports right away. Now, this next slide, we're going to discuss signing up for PUNs, okay? Again, as I mentioned in the last slide, you would just need to reach out to your ISC, your Independent Service Coordination Agency. If you're having a hard time locate them, doing your own research, and which usually is done via over the phone with the hotline that they have provided by the Division of Developmental Disabilities, or you can do it online. Again, if you're having a hard time, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you locate that office. We'll look it up ourselves and provide you the information via phone or email so that you can go ahead and begin to sign your loved one up and place them on the PUNs database list, okay? Now, this slide just goes over, in general, the process for early notification and the PUN selection. Remember, for your early notification, you want to go ahead and make sure that Medicaid is in place for the individual that's going to be placed in the PUNs database, because all of the services and supports are funded through Medicaid. So you want to make sure you have that taken care of. Now, if you need help trying to access the application or get the link to sign up for Medicaid, please reach out to us so that we can provide you that information and so you can start the process. Remember, signing up for Medicaid can take, I believe, weeks to months. So you want to get that started right away so there's no delay if you were to get pulled from PUNs, okay? You also want to start by gathering your evaluation records for the individual's mid-late teen years, okay? Because those documents will be requested from the ISC, okay? And they will provide information on exactly what documentation is needed so that you can prepare and make sure that you get that information sent into them within a good time, okay? Also, stay in contact with your ISC, your Independent Service Coordination Agency. They will be the ones handling all of the paperwork needed that has to be sent over to the Division of Developmental Disabilities. It's very important that you stay in contact and get familiar with the child's case manager that will be working with them throughout this process, okay? Now, with the PUN selection, you want to get yourself prepared to do your research and maybe look up different agencies and become familiar with the local developmental disability providers as well. Also, you want to look into participating in trainings such as the Know Your Option webinars that the Ligas Family Advocate Program hosts every first Thursday of each month. Also, we have the Spanish versions, which is conducted by our senior Ligas Family Advocate, Miss Ruth Aguilar. She does that on the first Fridays of each month. We also have other online events outside of those scheduled webinars that we have that speaks on the PUNs process. Family Matters may have information on their websites as far as their recordings and their online events as well that may be of assistance. So you want to just do some research. If you have questions, reach out so we can help you throughout the process so you can be familiar and prepared. That way there's no delay in getting the services and supports for the individual who is on the PUNs database waitlist, okay? Next, I'm going to go ahead and give this to Miss Annie Bruno, and she's going to discuss the children's waiver and some more information that you will need to know. Thank you, Miss Annie.
And thanks, Shakari. Thanks to everyone for being here today. I was going to say good morning, but I guess it's good afternoon. I'm going to try to rattle through this quick. It's a lot of information, so just rest assured you will have a copy of the PowerPoint, and we will be available certainly with any additional questions or concerns that pop up, because this will probably be a bit overwhelming because there's a lot here. All right, Shikari, I'm ready. Let's go. All right, so the Children's Home-Based Services at a glance. I get asked all the time, what am I applying for? What am I even getting from this? So let's quickly rattle through that. It's a Medicaid waiver, as we talked about, and this is so that you can continue to reside in your community, in your home, in your family home. The Division of Developmental Disabilities wants to give these types of funding out so that folks are not as likely to go into any sort of institutional care. So that's how we can get services here in the community. And as Shikari mentioned, your first step, if you haven't already, is to get onto the PUNS database and then hopefully be selected soon thereafter. But realistically, it's typically a number of years after the age of 18. You'll do your pre-admission screening, which is the hope to ensure that you're eligible and that you can receive these services. And we already kind of rattled through this, but I do want to make sure and note that the division has recently announced that the invitation letters for specifically children's waiver, do not have an expiration date. So if you choose this is not the right time to pursue these services, or maybe you're receiving other services and you feel like you're all set to go, you would want to communicate that with your independent service coordination agency that you are wanting to pursue this sometime, but in the future. Next. All right, so the benefits of home-based. So I just want to make sure, as we're talking about the children's waiver, I want to be clear that the children's waiver is for children's home-based services. There is no residential component through the children's waiver invitation to apply. So we're going to go in depth on all these. So I'm going to just move past this screen, Shikari, if you can go to the next slide. You're going to want to know this lingo. And as we had kind of talked about with a few key acronyms, you're going to want to know a few key moving parts here. So when we discuss home-based services, we're going to be talking about the individual, and that's the person with developmental disability who's receiving the waiver services. We're going to talk about personal support workers, as many would say PSWs. And these are folks that are hired to provide support and services, the direct care. And we're going to go a lot more in depth on that, so you'll know more about PSWs. An employer of record is a person that is a trusted individual to the family, often a parent, who is tasked with overseeing the workers, record keeping, making sure that the services aren't going over the allotted budget per month. And they may be assisted with this through Access, which is the fiscal agent. So these are the folks that are kind of the go-between between the family and the division. They are record keeping on the payroll and approving a start date for your worker. And they're the ones that are going to cut the paychecks to the workers. Now you may choose to purchase this optional service called self-direction assistance. And this is usually someone at like a disability provider agency who would provide this service. And it's help with managing all that is home-based, and there's a lot. So the self-direction assistant can help you with making sure you know what your budget is, making sure you know how to submit your timesheets, working through snags that you encounter. It's a really excellent optional service if you choose to purchase it. It comes from your monthly budget, which we will talk about more. And then as Shikari mentioned, your independent service coordination agency, these are the folks that are getting you into the waiver and overseeing you once you're in it. So they are going to be your best friend through this process, and you're going to want to maintain very close contact with them. Next. So with the children's waiver, again, we're just talking about children's. We're going to hop over to the adult waiver soon. But the children's waiver is a fixed funding amount, and it's the same for everybody. So in the children's waiver, it's 2 times the amount of SSI in a month. And so right now, that's $1,828 per month. As you can see here, that will increase in 2024 because the Social Security income is increasing as well. So you can do some flexible spending, which we'll talk about, and that's only allowed in the children's waiver. So you can bill up, you can flex up to twice your amount, so about 3,600-ish. But it's better maybe to think of it in like the whole calendar year, you get this much money. And so if you use a lot at the beginning, you're not going to have as much left at the end. All right, let's hop into adult services and start talking about those. So there's two main programs available for adults in Illinois with IDD, intellectual developmental disability. And Ruth mentioned this one briefly, and we just want to touch on it. There's a program called Intermediate Care Facility for Developmental Disability. And this is a residential option for folks. Usually the homes are 9 or more. There are some smaller homes, and they're licensed by the Illinois Department of Public Health. So they're paid for by your Medicaid, just like it would be in the DHS DDD waiver. However, the overseeing entity is different. It's Illinois Department of Public Health. And as such, if you feel like you really need residential placement right away, and this feels like a good fit for your family, you would not have to be selected off PUNS to move into an intermediate care facility. You would have to work with your independent service coordination agency to show that you were eligible, and you'd have to find a place that had an opening and could serve you, but you would not have to be selected from PUNS to get into an ICFDD. And then the home and community-based Medicaid waiver is more what we're going to talk about today. As we've kind of gone over, you have to be selected off the PUNS waiting list to apply. Within the adult waiver, not the children's waiver, within the adult waiver, there are group home options, community integrated living arrangements. And these are all paid for by your Medicaid waiver funding. And so we're going to kind of go into more detail there. Next slide. So there's two major programs within the home and community-based waiver. And one of those is home-based, and one of those are CILA, Community Integrated Living Arrangements. So as we kind of briefly touched on the home-based program, you'll remember in the children's waiver, it's 2 times the amount of SSI, but we're talking about the adult waiver now, it's 3 times the amount of SSI per month. So in the adult waiver, it's $2,742 a month. Right now, that will change in January. And something to note is that there is no flexible option in the adult waiver. You get that $2,700 a month, and if you don't use it, it goes away. And so it's really more of a month-to-month usage. And we're going to touch on all these programs listed underneath home base. But just to note, with CILA funding, there's a couple different arrangements. I think Ruth's going to go into some more detail, but you can see that there's different CILA arrangements and that there is no fixed funding amount. It's individualized. Next. And what's the core difference, you may be asking, between home-based and CILA? Because both can be used in the community, both can be kind of unique arrangements. The main difference is who's going to manage your services. So if you choose to have home-based services where you're getting money each month and it's a set amount across the board for everyone, you are kind of the person to oversee. Your family is going to be in charge of managing those services. The difference here being that in a group home, you are working with a developmental disability provider agency who's going to be providing the care and overseeing the care. Next. So you may ask, where can I use these services? Well, the short answer is anywhere within the state of Illinois. But I want to be clear that it does not transfer to another state. So if you choose to move, your waiver does not follow you. Now, it's helpful often if you're moving to a new state and reapplying to show that you received waiver services in Illinois. But if you move over to Terre Haute, you won't be able to use these waiver services. But within the waiver, there's a whole lot of flexibility. So it could be in the family home where you're having home-based. You could live in a group home with 7 other people. You could live in a supportive housing environment. It's pretty flexible. One thing to note here is that you cannot receive more than one Illinois waiver at a time. And a lot of folks may be familiar or have Division of Rehabilitation Services home services. And if you do have those, you will not be able to also get into this waiver. So you can choose what kind of works best for your family, but you cannot have both at the same time. Next. So real briefly, this is kind of a snapshot of the services that are available within home-based. Remember, it's fixed funding. It's that same monthly allotment for everybody set by the rate of SSI. We've highlighted a few here, which are mostly the showstoppers. These are the services that most people tend to pursue. You've got community day services, which was previously called like day training. And so these are, can in the adult waiver kind of mimic a school day where it's like a 9 to 3 most typically. You may be at a center, you may be out in the community, you may be volunteering, but there's community day services. And self-direction assistance we're going to touch on, and we're going to also talk about personal support workers. So just want to kind of snapshot these. As you can see, some of them require a prior approval with your independent service coordinator, which I believe Ruth is going to talk a little bit more about. So we can go to the next slide. So as I kind of said, the main service that most people choose to use most of their budget is personal support workers. And I'm talking globally, but personal support worker hours are a very valued service in home base. Some things you're going to want to know about a personal support worker if you are looking at hiring and you're receiving this funding. A personal support worker has to be over the age of 18. If you have an adult who's over the age of 18 receiving services, then their parent or legal guardian can also be their worker. But if the individual is under the age of 18 receiving services, their parent or legal guardian cannot work with them. So what would you be looking for in a personal support worker? Well, you're going to want someone who is able to support the individual well, be free of abuse and neglect, provide services as outlined in the personal plan, and they will be required to pass a number of background checks, which is what Access, the fiscal agent, will help facilitate. And you're going to want to just be aware that Homebase has what's called a backup plan. I think it's a 2-page form, basically writing out what would happen. What is the responsibility of the personal support worker and the family if an emergency happens? What's our backup plan? Next. And you just remember too that you're working within a fixed monthly income. So you may have 3 workers, but they're all going to be pulling from that same bucket of money. Or you may have 1 worker. So I would encourage you to start thinking about your networks, like family, friends, loved ones, people from church, people from school, people from your neighborhood, family, friends. They have to be over the age of 18 to serve as a worker, and they have to pass a background check. And they will work with Access, the fiscal agent, to become enrolled as your worker. Next slide. Okay, just a real touch on this real quick. This is a new requirement as of September from actually federal Medicaid that came down through Illinois, that anyone providing personal support work has to now kind of clock in and clock out based on this electronic visit verification. Most people are going to be doing this on an app on their phone. There is a landline way of doing it, but essentially you're going to like check into your shift on your phone, and your employer of record will approve your timesheet at the, I think it's every 2 weeks, but whenever the employer approves, they'll see that you clocked in and clocked out. Now, something to note with this is that if you are a live-in caregiver of the individual receiving services, you can apply to be exempt from this so that you're not having to clock in and clock out, in your own home caring for your son or daughter. And the app also has a GPS component to it where they can see if you're in the where the individual resides. So that you're not having a personal support worker, off in Florida who's clocking in for their shift. So I just want to touch on that real quick, but certainly reach out. You'll get a copy of the slides with that contact information if you have questions. All right, and then my final little slide here is just kind of an example to sort of walk you through and begin to picture what this could look like. So noted here are some set rates by the division. So self-direction assistance, which is that optional service I mentioned to kind of help you through your budget and enrolling your workers, that's set at $51.27 per hour. Community day services is that daytime programming I mentioned at $15.10 an hour. And then let's just say, for example, that you want to also have a personal support worker and you're going to pay them $15 an hour. You have to account for taxes, so it actually costs you in your budget a little bit more. It's more like $16.28, which is the cost to you. And your employer, your family member, whoever it is that's serving as the employer, can set whatever hourly rate they want with their workers, as long as they're following the minimum wage guidelines for their area. So let's start at a main first budget here. That's your monthly amount, $27.42. And let's say you're going to work with a self-direction assistant at a provider agency who's going to help you enroll your workers and manage your budget. And they say, well, we're going to charge 3 hours a month at $51.27. Okay, so subtract $153.81, and now you've got $2,588 left over. And let's say the individual receiving services wants to go to a daytime program, a community day service provider. And 6 hours a day, maybe 9 to 3, and they're going to do that 5 days a week, and they're going to do that 4 weeks out of the month. Roughly, you're looking at 120 hours set at that DHS rate, which is 1,000. That would total 1,812. Now you subtract that, so you're down to $776 you have that month. And you want to use any of your leftover time for personal support workers, and this could be Friday night going out to a movie together, or going grocery shopping, or helping with laundry at home. You're going to take 776 and then you're going to subtract it by that cost to you rate. If you're paying your hourly worker $15, it's going to cost you $16.28. And you have 47 hours left over that month for a personal support worker. So you're looking at like 10 or 11 a week, which is pretty good. So this is just an example of looking at that bucket of funding and slowly paying off pieces of it towards various services. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Ruth, who's going to go in a bit more detail about SILA supports and some other services available. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Annie. Thank you. So as you can see, this is another snapshot, very similar to what Annie showed you earlier for the home base, but this one is for SILA, which stands for Community Integrated Living Arrangements. So basically, once you're approved for services, your coordinator will show you the menu of services from which you can pick those services. Whether you choose home base or the SILA route, they will present those elements from the menu of services available to you. Typically, the community integrated living arrangements comes with residential part aspect of it. And then they will combine it with community day service program or supported employment, whether the person wants to go to a workshop or they want to get a job in the community. So those are the most popular items on the menu when a person is selecting SILA. But there is also components like behavioral intervention or counseling or even psychotherapy. And for both of them, and even for the children's, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it, is adaptive equipment and home modifications or vehicle modifications available to the people participating in this program. And that comes from a different bucket of money. So bear with me, and I'm going to try to speed up because I want to make sure that we have time for answering questions. Next slide, please. So what a 24-hour group home looks like. You say you choose SILA and then the CELA with the component of residential. If the person wants to attend a 24-hour group home, this is a house in the community that looks like yours and mine, and there will be staff 24 hours a day providing support and services to the individuals. They will be living there with other people that is not their family members, just other individuals also receiving services. And the provider can arrange transportation, they can arrange outings, they can pick up their medication, they can take them to the doctor's appointments if necessary, and they will take care of the home, the maintenance of the home. But they can cook together, they will live like in a community setting, but at the same time, they may or may not have their own bedroom, and they will share the common areas like the kitchen and the living room and spaces that are for everybody. Next slide, please. So another residential setting, keep in mind that a CELA group home might not be available, and you may be on a waiting list just for that. Say you want to, you select a group home, but what's going to happen is that even though you already waited for services, you might want to keep in mind that the providers may have waiting lists. Another residential component or residential setting is the intermittent hourly services. This is for people who is more independent. They can live in the community on their own, but they still need some sort of support. They will choose this setting where they can live in a condo, an apartment, or a house. They pay their own rent and they go about their daily lives, but they have a direct support professional being sent by an agency to provide a specific supports. And this is typically between 15 and 20 hours being approved per week. So you want to keep in mind that it's not as comprehensive of supports being delivered here. But if this is what works for you, this is one of the choices that you might want to consider. Next slide, please. The host family homes is not as popular, but it's also maybe available. This is just pretend that I, Ruth Aguilar, want to open my house to an individual receiving services. So everybody in my house over 18 years old will go through an extensive background check. They will come and inspect my house, make sure that I have a room available for that person and that I can actually serve this individual. If they do a matching and the individual is okay with living with my family, then he or she will come and live, and we will treat this person as a part of our family, and the state will pay me a stipend for taking care of that individual. Now, keep in mind that you cannot do this for your own family member. This is for people that is not related to you. Okay, next slide, please. Now let's talk about home and vehicle modifications and that extra bucket of funding that you might want to know, because this is an important element to keep in mind. Once either the children or the adults are in services, they are already receiving the waiver services, they are entitled to apply for these benefits, which comes up to $15,000 every 5 years. And you can use this funding to make modifications either to your home or to your vehicle, whether you need accessibility to move around the community. Say somebody is a wheelchair user and this person cannot move around without using their wheelchair, but they need an accessible vehicle to navigate around the community. They can use these funding to modify the vehicle, or you can use it to modify the bathroom or the kitchen to make it safer and more accessible for that individual. Also, in the next slide, I will show you about adaptive equipment, because I want to cover a little bit about assistive technology, and also for individuals who do not have physical limitations but can still benefit from using this funding. Say somebody with autism. This person can benefit for the $15,000 every 5 years to purchase adaptive equipment. I have seen more and more families with people, with individuals with autism that are using this funding to build a sensory room. So when the person is having anxiety attacks and all of those behaviors that can be moderated with using a weighted blanket, or maybe dim the lights, or maybe even abuse resistant walls. Sometimes people have behaviors and they punch the walls or doors, and you can use the funding to prevent and to have a home that is a safe environment for these individuals. So, and these are just examples. You can be creative, but always keep in mind that to access this funding, although you're entitled to apply for it, you need to go through your ISC and maybe have a self-direction assistant help you with the application process, because what is required is basically you need at least 2 vendors to give you an estimate of what it will be like in terms of the cost and what services they will provide. And then the state will approve the funding. You cannot go about and do the purchase and then come back and request a reimbursement. It doesn't work like that, okay? Just keep that in mind. Next slide, please. These are some resources for you to go through. Especially, I want you to touch base on the AVE Illinois assistance, because if you need to apply for Medicaid, you want to go through that. And then somebody asked a question about Medicaid. We're going to address that in a minute. But keep in mind that these resources are coming straight from the source, and you can read more information about that. Next slide, please. This is our contact information. We finally made it to the end of the show, and we will be ready to answer any questions that are being asked. Our director, Ms. Shirley Perez, is always available to answer questions for you. You'll have our contact information in there to reach out to us at any point in time. And with that, Carrie, I pass back to you so you can start with the Q&A. Thank you.
A lot of great information for everyone participating today. So we'll jump into the Q&A. We have about 9 minutes left. I do want to say, when the session ends, that you should get a survey. Please, complete that survey and give us feedback on everything. So the first question is, unless I understood it incorrectly, IQ is different than having a developmental delay for the determination of eligibility. How much of a developmental delay makes the person eligible for the PUNS list? How is this determined?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to address that question, Annie and Shakari. So there's a specific definition for developmental disability, and I'm gonna read it to you. Developmental disabilities are a group of conditions due to impairment in physical, learning, language, or behavior areas. These conditions may begin during the developing years, and it's anticipated that these will last throughout the lifetime. That is the definition of developmental disability. Now, when they are looking, and by they I mean the Independent Service Coordination Agency, are looking at the IQ and the definition of intellectual disability, they need to have a psychological assessment. Regardless, everybody going through the pre-admission screening must have a psychological assessment, and they look at the IQ. And when a person has an intellectual disability, they look at the IQ of 70 or below, but that doesn't mean that if you are above 70, you will be disqualified for this program. It's just a guideline that is set by the state to follow that IQ number. But if a person with autism, which as an example, they tend to have a higher IQ, they also look at the 6 major life areas, and they look for deficits, at least 3 deficits in those 6 major life areas. And if you want more information about that, email me, send me an email, and I can give you the information as to how do they determine the eligibility.
Okay, so the next question is just, may I have the link to Medicaid? We're in a seeking services, or yes, we're seeking services, but have yet to do this Medicaid process. We have had different people calling us each year on the PUNS, so do we get a personal caseworker assigned when we are pulled?
Yes, we can absolutely send you a link to the Medicaid. If you would like, you can reach out to us via phone or email. Remember, the contact information is on the very last slide of this presentation. And if I recall, Ms. Carey said that they're going to send out a recording of it as well as the slides that we had today. I'm also going to put our information in the chat box so that you can reach out and we'll send that link to you right directly to you, okay? But you want to go ahead and get that Medicaid in place now. As I said, it's going to take time for them to process it. So you want to just go ahead and get that knocked out. So you'll be already prepared once that individual is selected.
And just to add to that, I want to clarify that if you are in the PONS waiting list, you don't need to have Medicaid at that time. You need to apply for Medicaid once you're in the process of getting the services. If you are an adult while you're getting the pre-admission, you might want to get a head start on the application for Medicaid. If you are in the children's PONS selection, you want to make sure that you talk to your ISC first, because in this case is different. The application for Medicaid, they may look at the parent's income, but because the person has been PONS selected, they will do it in a different way. The child must go through the pre-admission screening and get the approval for funding, and then the ISC will help you apply for Medicaid. So it depends on the case-by-case basis.
And there was also a question in there about your caseworker at your ISC. Just to note that the ISC agencies are set up in different ways, but oftentimes there's someone who just does PUNS updates, and then there's someone who does these pre-admission screenings, and then you may get assigned a third different person once you are into the waiver and receiving what are called ISSA services, Individual Service and Support Advocacy Services. So it may change a little bit, but you should make sure you know who your contact is at any given point.
Okay, and I did put in the chat the Family Matters website. You can visit that for today's recording. It will be posted later this week, and tomorrow the presentation slides will be sent out. The next question is, what do I advise parents who do not qualify for Medicaid now, but whose child will eventually as they age out of the parent's insurance? Do they sign up for PUNS? And how, something about how without Medicaid necessity.
Well, first and foremost, absolutely, yes, they should sign up for PUNS. That's your first step. You're going to want to get on that wait list. As far as parents who do not qualify for Medicaid, when the individual is a child and they're pulled for the children's waiver, as Ruth was just talking about, you're going to want to work with the ISC about any Medicaid snags, because they should be able to get you help in enrolling for Medicaid with the parental income being excluded. So that's a conversation to have with an independent service coordination agency. And then if you're working with an adult, Medicaid will look at that individual's income over the age of 18 as their own head of household of one. So that often is another thing that's just good to know about when you're applying for Medicaid.
Okay, so the next question is, do we need to sign up for Medicaid even if you are not on the PUNS list? Did we do that one already? Okay. My 15-year-old is on the PUNS list database but does not have Medicare. Does she have to have Medicare?
No. No, ma'am. It's only the Medicaid is required once you are selected from the PUNS database. You want to make sure it's Medicaid. Remember, the services and supports are funded through Medicaid and Medicaid only.
What age signifies child-based waiver?
So a person receiving services from the age of 3 up until 22, and the 22 might be a great area because if they are still in school, they still receiving services from school, they will transition to the adult waiver at the age of 22. But if the person turns 18 and they get their high school diploma and they are no longer in school and you are able to prove that, you may request to your ISC to transition to the adult waiver at that point in time.
The next is, can a husband be employer if wife is one of the PSWs?
Yes, the thing to note is that whoever is the employer of record cannot also be a personal support worker. That has to be two separate people, but the employer can certainly be one parent and the worker be the other parent as long as the individual is over 18 and a parent can be a worker. And I guess I'll mention too, if the individual receiving services is over the age of 18 and is legally, does not have a guardian, is legally deemed competent, retaining their rights, they can actually serve as their own employer as well.
Is the waiver amount 2 times what you would qualify for in SSI or 2 times the maximum amount? We have deductions in our SSI because of employment income.
No, the SSI amount that a person receives does not impact what the SSI amount is set for everybody. So the calculations are taken for what is set for everybody, not for what the person receives.
Are there costs associated with the background checks? Can the waiver pay for that for a PSW?
There are not costs associated with it. Access, the fiscal agent, will send a letter to say, okay, it's time to go get fingerprinted, and the worker will take that letter and it's reimbursed through Access.
So the PSW can or cannot be a parent or guardian.
Yes, the PSW can be the parent or guardian for the adult waiver, as long as they are over the age of 18. That is the person who's going to be receiving services and supports. If they're over 18, the parent can be the personal support worker. If they are under the age of 18, then the parents, the mother or the dad, cannot be the personal support worker. Okay.
So to be clear, we choose community or home-based waiver, one or the other.
Yes, that's correct. But do note that if for whatever reason you wanted to switch waivers due to circumstances changing, you can always switch the waiver from SILA to home-based supports or home-based supports to SILA. It just, you will have to definitely reach out to your child's case manager, my apologies, to go through that process, and they will provide the instructions on how to do that.
Yeah, and just to expand on that real quick, because it's all the same 3 words. The whole thing is called the home and community-based waiver. And the programs are called home-based services and then community integrated living arrangements. So when you enter the home and community-based waiver, you will be picking between either home-based services or community integrated living arrangements. And as Shakari mentioned, you would talk with your independent service coordinator to switch programs if that came up as being needed.
We have quite a few more questions. How many more would you like to take? We're a few minutes over time, so.
Well, I'm okay with staying a little longer if it's needed. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is, who should families turn to if there are issues with agency we have hired to assist with managing our home-based services? And how can families familiarize themselves with the timesheet process and with their rights to avoid feeling bullied by the self-direction assistance agency?
Okay, I can take that one, and then you guys can elaborate a little more if you want to. Self-direction assistant, as we mentioned, is an optional service. If you choose to go in that direction, what's going to happen is that your independent service coordinator will send referrals. And these referrals will be out to different agencies that provide that service. You will interview with them, and they will serve you if you decide to hire them. Then once you contract with them, whatever is 3 hours, 2 hours a month, whatever the case may be, they will be able to guide you in the process of learning how to submit timesheets, how to manage your budget, how to train your personal support worker. They can help you even find personal support workers and things like that. So they will be helping you in guiding the process, and they will be keeping records for when the state decides to conduct an audit on the case. So although it is an optional service, they do a lot of work and they help you with so many things that even go beyond their scope of work.
The ARC is my ISC, right?
No. The Arc of Illinois is not a provider agency. We are the Ligas Family Advocate Program, and we receive funding from the Department of Human Services to advocate for you if you need it, to give you information and resources. If you are selected from ponds, you need to reach out to your independent service coordinator, and that is by geographical area. Depending where you live, you are assigned an ISC, and we can help you find that agency if you need it. Just reach out to us.
Okay, do you help families with the transition from SSDI from a child status to an adult application process for Social Security?
No, we're not Social Security experts, but we can help you and guide you, directing you with a person who might be able to assist you in that.
And can $15,000 for a car modification be used to help purchase of a vehicle?
The vehicle modification is what it says. You may use the money to modify a vehicle that you will pay for. Sometimes agencies will try to sell you a van that it's already modified. So you will have to come with arrangements, because those are more expensive than the $15,000 that is allowed. So you will have to end up paying, like when you go to a dealer and buy a car, right? You will have your monthly payments, or if you can pay out of pocket or use another form of payment, but you will use the $15,000 towards the modification itself, not to purchase a vehicle.
Okay, how does one get a diagnosis needed to be put on the PUNS list? Who does it? Is it covered by Medicaid? Can you get a diagnosis as an adult?
I can tackle that. Try to process each question. Typically, if you're under the age of 18, you may get a diagnosis from a developmental pediatrician or a psychologist or your primary care physician. Some diagnoses are going to be noticed right at birth. Others may get diagnosed in the developmental years. So if you're seeking a diagnosis for a child, I would start with your pediatrician and try to get a referral to a developmental pediatrician or a psychologist. If you're an adult trying to seek a diagnosis, again, I'd maybe start with a psychologist who could do kind of a large evaluation to try to identify a diagnosis. But I guess it should be noted that most folks who are going to qualify for this program are going to have gotten a developmental diagnosis early in life before the age of 18 or 22, depending on the related conditions. Hope that made sense.
We're at about 10 after. Do you want to keep going, or do you want me to copy the rest of the questions for email response?
It's your call.
I'm fine continuing either way. So
How many questions do we have left? Maybe we can address them.
around 13, it looks like.
Well, that's going to take us probably more than half an hour to address. Yeah, we can answer maybe 1 or 2 more questions and then left the rest for an email follow-up.
Okay.
Is that okay with everybody?
see, I think you may have answered this. Do we need to sign up for Medicaid even if you're on the PUNS list seeking services already? What if you don't qualify for Medicaid due to parent income? I feel like that was addressed already, correct? How do families ensure they are included in the planning and managing of PSWs when the employer of record is our adult child with a disability? It seems that we have been left out of the loop by the PSW and the agency providing self-direction assistance, and the information we are receiving from our daughter is troubling in that it seems she is receiving pressure from the PSW and the agency to adjust hours and hourly wages, etc. What rights do parents have for individuals with a disability?
That's a tough situation, and we'd be happy to talk more on a personal basis. Generally, in a situation like that, you're going to want to be thinking of what rights does the individual have, and if they retain their rights, they are allowed to communicate with their service providers. I would probably, in this situation, be encouraging some sort of team meeting to get your independent service coordinator together, the family, and the self-direction assistant, but certainly feel free to reach out to us directly to talk about that in more detail.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and collect the rest of the questions. We appreciate you attending today and giving us your time and staying over to answer questions as well. So look for that recording on our website. Please look for that survey. Take that. You should get that when this session ends. And again, we appreciate all of your participation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.